Was Kalani Sitake fishing for other jobs? Mike Gundy done after this season, and Scott Frost a championship coach? This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. Let's talk coaches as we've done all week, another show full of it. And tonight, the Big 12 Squad Show will also release both on YouTube and on audio. We'll start. Kalani Sitake, was he in talks with other programs, and that's why the extension came when it did? Also, Mike Gundy, 1 year to turn it around, or it's someone new. Oh, hey, future me here butting in. While you were recording this, Rich Rodriguez was hired by West Virginia per Pete Thamel. If we can make that third segment about that, that'd be great. About how some analysts say it's a bad move. Is that good? Okay, hey, bye. If you hit subscribe, I do get to keep my job, which would be key during the holiday season. Kalani Sitake, I haven't called him. I have not talked to him. I've yet to reach out after he signed his extension. But I know this. I'm confident in this. It was not another job. It was not another job that kept his contract at BYU extended. It is not him flirting with other universities. Though I saw on Twitter, the first thing was, isn't it weird timing that late at night, right after Utah collects its deal with Kyle Whittingham saying he's going to stick around and Bronco Mendenhall becomes the head coach at Utah State, that then BYU makes its call after Utah solidified, after Utah State is solidified? Where else would Kalani Sitake have gone? Here's the big problem that I keep mentioning for other schools. West Virginia, struggling to find a head coach at the time of recording this. They can't figure their ish out. It has been way longer than they need to hire a head coach, and they still haven't. Let's go to Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State. Gundy would love an out. It sounds like, and I know Gundy has interviewed with colleges before during his tenure in Stillwater. It sounds like if the coaching carousel was a little bit different and better jobs were open, Mike Gundy could be at the forefront of a lot of those gigs. So where would Kalani Sitake have gone? In a year where so few major jobs are available right now, what would he have done? Gone to Utah State? No. Gone to Utah? Of course not. The idea that the rumor has been swirling that Sitake could have been in talks, could have been locked down by BYU because they were worried he would leave is completely asinine. The fact that I saw those comments, those tweets, is stupid. Deseret.com writes the move by BYU athletic director Tom Holmoe came hours after Utah head coach Kyle Whittingham announced he was returning to lead the Utes next season. It also mentions that Bronco Mendenhall hire at Utah State. Here is a point the Deseret makes that I do believe is true. I'll read the quote. BYU's need to extend and lock up Sitake for a longer period of time may have been pushed by the need to strike a deal that would help him retain members of his current coaching staff. Many of them have received interest in the last 2 weeks, especially with the shuffling of Utah's offensive staff and the Utah State coaching search. Now, if the shuffling of Utah's offensive staff or Utah State called A-Rod and said, hey, Aaron Roderick, would you come coach here? Would any of us be? Oh, no, please, no. The big name here is Jay Hill. The big guy on campus, the big man that needed Kalani Sitake to find a way to get that deal. Tom Holmoe to say, oh, yep, yeah, was Jay Hill. The assistants of the BYU staff have been clutch, have been revolutionary on the defensive side of the ball specifically. And this is a move that not only locks up Sitake, but brings in total, complete comfort to say our assistants can be fed. BYU is committed to spending money, which is something that for a long time, BYU wasn't necessarily all that committed to. They are now. Deseret says, although a high-ranking BYU official explained that the university's administration has been working on a new contract for some time, the time was right to get it done and signal to his top assistants they would be taken care of. I do believe that is the case. This wasn't we're going to sign it right now. We haven't talked about this at all. This was in the making, but it was all about retaining assistants. If you are the rest of the Big 12 And we're seeing it right now with like Texas Tech is replacing both coordinators. If you're the rest of the Big 12 wondering, why does this matter on the whole? The second best team in the conference last season is going to likely retain its entire coaching staff. That's pretty dangerous. Its quarterback coming back too. When the culture of Sitake has been there longer than most of the head coaches in the Big 12 have been at their respective schools, that is how you know everyone should look at that program and go, shoot, they got their ish figured out. And the second, listen to this. This is what you bring to your water cooler. The second that there was a doubt about these assistants staying put in Provo, the athletic director said, I'll figure out a way to keep everybody put if you'll trust me. I'll keep the head coach here if you'll trust me. The guy who was supposed to be the BYU head basketball coach coming over from Utah is an assistant on the BYU staff right now because the athletic director has committed to NIL, the transfer portal, and most importantly, taking care of coaches. Not to say that Holmo hadn't beforehand, but all of this move, all of the timing of this move screams, we're going to look around the room at all the assistants and say, stay. We're building something where our assistants can be treated like head coaches from a compensation standpoint. And there are not a lot of Big 12 schools that can say that, that can brag about that. BYU can now. I'm worried on behalf of the rest of the Big 12, given the resources, the following, the reach of BYU, that this school is finally tapping into its resources enough that the rest of us are going to have to play catch up for a university that's rooted in one of the fastest growing faiths in the entire world. That is the flagship of that. The power that BYU holds from that, as well as its brand that's growing every day, should scare the rest of the conference. Are there universities who have been, like Utah's had a better football program the last decade? No doubt. Last 15 years, no doubt. Baylor has, for sure. But, Oklahoma State has, yeah, but, I fear they're coming. Which, only after marriage. All right, coming up, Mike Gundy has 1 year to turn things around. Whoa! This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by, yeah, you guessed it. How did you know? It is Game Time. Game Time is the place where I go get my tickets. Hey, Game Time, there's a cool festival coming up that I'd really like to go to. Would you please let me go to that festival? Game Time says, what festival? Under the Big Sky in Montana, and Game Time has tickets for the cheapest. That's right. Game Time has all-in pricing. Toggle that feature. It shows you the total up front. No surprise fees at checkout. Seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time picks. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account. Redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is Game Time.
Oklahoma State this year, Drake, fell flat on their face and certainly didn't have the year that was expected of them. And then we get some drama in the offseason with I'm a man, I'm 40. We all know the soundbite, right? Mike Gundy, and rumors that they may fire him for cause if he doesn't sign this contract, this, that, and the other. He does end up signing the contract. Are things a mess right now at Oklahoma State, or do you think that putting all this behind them, they can now move forward and rebuild, or a little bit of both?
You know, I've always supported Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State because he's got the longevity. He's been the most successful long-term coach in the Big 12 that we've seen since maybe a Bill Snyder. And the biggest issue here is it's a guy that may have outstayed his welcome in the eyes of a lot of Oklahoma State fans and obviously in the eyes of the Oklahoma State administration. If it's true they gave him the ultimatum of sign this restructured contract or we're done, no questions, no negotiation, then that is them saying we are fed up with this and something has to change. And we've seen in years past a guy have success success at a school that was previously middling. You mentioned like a prom at Purdue and the games he was able to win, and always rumored for the Arkansas coaching job. Or a couple years ago, will he go to TCU or will he go to Baylor? There were those question marks. And Gundy, to be honest with you, has not shied away from job hunting and utilizing his leverage while at Oklahoma State. He's interviewed, or at least been in talks with multiple universities about being their head coach, with mostly an opportunity to get more money out of the athletic department. I think at this point, the athletic department is fed up. They're done. You went 3-9 this past season with a roster that had 21 returning starters. At some point, it's the same players. The coaches have to be held accountable. He held on to his buddies, the offensive and defensive coordinator, over the course of the year. And then when push came to shove, it was Mike. You've got to re-sign this contract in a different way, or we're going to move into a different direction. And to be honest with you, TJ, the biggest piece of this to me was this happened in the wrong offseason for Gundy. There wasn't a job sitting there. Arkansas wasn't open for Gundy to hop over. He didn't want to go to Purdue and UCF, the interconference team. He doesn't fit a UCF, given Orlando and the state of Florida in general. He is all things Oklahoma and kind of that region of the country. And so when there wasn't that TCU maybe or a Texas Tech sitting there waiting to scoop him up and say, hey, come do it your way here, he was kind of left with no other option but to re-sign that contract or maybe even get out of coaching altogether.
Do you think it works out? Do you think he can change? People talk about like Dabo being stubborn, and I won't necessarily put him quite in that category, but I think it's a fair enough comparison. Mm-hmm. Do you think it'll work out? Do you think he'll change enough to where this can be successful?
Here's the biggest problem. I want to say yes if he had 2 years to figure it out. He doesn't. He has 1 season to figure this thing out. And last year they were in the Big 12 championship game, and he's been there for 2 decades. You've got to give the guy a bit of a leash, right? He's stubborn. He's hard to work with. He's somebody the media hasn't really gotten along with. He's the soundbite guy. He goes to Big 12 media days this year and says, oh, yeah, Ollie Gordon got a DUI. Well, if I was going to get a DUI for every time I've driven after drinking 3 or 4 beers, I'd have 1,000 of those. You can't say that. You just cannot. And he said it in front of the cameras at media days, So he is, with his comments and actions off of the field, he has really cut his time even shorter at Oklahoma State. If he had 2 years, he could right the ship. But the question becomes, can Mike Gundy handle the pressure to win right away? He's never really had to do that. Now that he does, I don't like the chances next season of Oklahoma State being a huge player.
The big picture thing that I look at is just the restructuring of the contract to put more money back into the athletes. Do you think that that's more indicative of a shift in college football to where ADs, athletic departments, programs, universities understand that coaches maybe aren't worth $8, $9, $10, $11, $12 million and we need to invest back into players? Or is this a more Oklahoma State specific thing where there were some issues with Gundy, or could this be a college football shift?
There will be universities. I think Oklahoma State is one of those that just do not respect what NIL should be. Look, T. Boone Pickens is one of the largest donors at a university in history at this level, and somebody who gave a lot of money to Oklahoma State. And, they're at a point now where that money has always gone to the university and building facilities and having big coaches. Now that it has to go to the kids, is Mike Gundy that kind of guy? Is Mike Gundy the guy that says, yeah, sure, I'll give my money, my contract to the players? Obviously, he didn't want to. This wasn't a very positive situation for him. So while there are coaches, Kenny Dillingham, or even Dave Aranda at Baylor, or Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, who can become more CEO types and understand, all right, this is a kid who's going to make more money than our offensive coordinator. That's the nature of the game. Mike Gundy might always be too stubborn to relent in that category. And if that's the case, I just think it's going to be hard to win. Even a Matt Campbell is starting to open up and say, all right, our NIL will never be elite, but let's give these players what they deserve, put them in a great spot, and go win football games. I don't see Mike Gundy being that guy. Again, if he had 2 or 3 years to build upon, hey, we're going to not do a ton of NIL, Dabo Swinney, we're not going to do a ton of NIL or a ton of transfer portal. We're going to do things our way. If he had 2 or 3 years to do it, maybe. But he doesn't. He has 1 season, and that's a tough thing to do.
The idea of firing him for cause, and I'm asking this out of complete ignorance, are there underlying things that they could have fired him for cause for? Was not signing the contract cause, or what was the threat there? What really could they have done?
Yeah, I mean, if Mike Gundy really wanted the buyout, he probably could have gotten it. I don't see there being cause, and if there was, it would have to be more public than whatever the conversations were behind closed doors. You had old players that would come out and say that Gundy had made racist remarks, and some of those may be founded. I don't know. I wasn't there, and there have been no official reports or official police reports of some sort of hate speech that Gundy has spewed out. So until we have something tangible, I think it's tough to say that there would have been actual cause to get Gundy gone. Whether that's, look, agree or disagree with his politics, he's been very loud about what he believes. And I don't think that's something you go and say, hey, we're going to fire this guy because he believes X, Y, and Z, or because he said X, Y, and Z about a DUI. It's just not enough. Does it toe the line? Sure, but I'm not sure that Gundy could have been fired for cause. But at the same time, I think Oklahoma State said, look, we'll pay you the buyout at this point. We just want to get rid of you unless you sign this contract or we hold on to you under these stipulations. It does seem like, though I wasn't in the room where it happened, that is the case.
Prediction time. Does he coach all 12 games next year?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that it's what's so tough is when you got a 2-decade guy who's in the conference championship last year, the last thing that I want to do is give the idea that, hey, we are in such turmoil as an athletic department, we're going to fire the guy midseason. I think Kyle Whittingham gets a bit of this too. We're not going to take this dude and say, you know what, midseason, we're done. We have seen, TJ, it's so easy now to pick up a phone, call a coach in week 11 and say, hey, there's a very good chance we're making a move. Would you be interested? That happens. Whether or not you fire your coach, there will be talks and conversations that go on. That comes from, that goes down to players. There's a level at which players in week 12 are getting a DM from somebody's friend of a cousin who was their trainer in high school, where we are going to gauge the waters and test whether or not you'd come coach for us. I do believe that's the route Oklahoma State will go ultimately, rather than making a change in season, because it's always embarrassing. When the Mac Brown deal happens and Mac comes to the podium and says, I wanted to coach our guys one last time, they completely locked me into leaving before that game. That's a very embarrassing look, and other coaches are not going to want to be at your university when that is your rhetoric. So I do believe Oklahoma State will hold on to him for the duration of next year.
Big picture for Oklahoma State, I'll ask this and we'll wrap up. Can they get to where they are elite in the Big? Like, if they move on from Gundy after next year, can that program get back? Can they get back to where they're competing in a power in the Big 12?
Yeah, I'm not going to shock anybody by saying this. Stillwater's a tough place to win. Morgantown is a tough place to win. Ames, Iowa is a tough place to win. Fort Worth is not. Waco really isn't that bad, and obviously anybody in the Scottsdale area or even the Salt Lake area, you've got access to a big city or a big recruiting pool. Stillwater is really tough to get that. If you built a team of just kids from Oklahoma, they wouldn't win a dang football game. And I say that as somebody from Arkansas. So can they rebuild without Mike Gundy? Oh, it's going to take an innovator. It's going to take somebody who's got a different gear, a Kenny Dillingham type, that's got something that brings a guy into a tough situation in Stillwater to win. I think you're seeing it with the basketball program right now. They stink. They really, really stink. And for football, it might be the same case if they do move on from Gundy, a guy who's proven he at least can win there. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is exactly where you go today, right now, to bet on Arizona State as the national champion in our nation. You can do it. And it's plus odds, very plus odds. They have some of the worst odds, actually. Worst odds means good thing for you when you bet on FanDuel, and it hits. Tackle the NFL or college with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on NFL all in one place. Get a hunch in the middle of a game, view the live stats, play-by-play, and so much more on FanDuel. FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Visit FanDuel today. Some analysts did not think the Rich Rodriguez to West Virginia move was the right one. I was watching 365 Sports yesterday, as I do a lot of days. They have great coverage of the Big 12, and the panelists pretty much agreed that Rich Rodriguez wasn't the guy for the job at West Virginia and that Ren Baker should avoid him. One of the reasons cited was that bringing him in is the old, and there should be a focus on the new, and that West Virginia should move forward with a coach who wasn't there 2 decades ago and a guy who might not be in tune with winning at a school like West Virginia in the Big 12. Wrong. I couldn't disagree more with that. Was Guy the president back then? Was Ren Baker the athletic director? Were any of these players still there? What is old about bringing this guy back that is, well, that's the same AD, same president, same administration. I guess everything's the same again. And if it did work then, even if it was old, why wouldn't it work now? And I can tell you why it isn't old, why it is new. Everything built around Rich Rodriguez at West Virginia will be pretty much brand new. This isn't just we reinsert this regime. And here's why this isn't a bad thing. I talked about this on yesterday's emergency show, is you're hiring a man who took Jacksonville State from the FCS ranks to the FBS ranks. It is hard to bring a school from one conference to the other. Hello, Utah. Hello, Arizona, where you can go from being a championship caliber team, you move conferences, and it's a little shakier, and you start losing immediately. He took, not from different conferences, he took Jacksonville State from different levels of college football, went 9-4 in his first year at the FBS level in Conference USA, went 9-4, 7-1 this year, first place in Conference USA, inserted against other FBS opponents. What is old about that? What is old about that? This is new. This is new. He just won. I've heard so many analysts talking about Rich Rodriguez as if he is a hire who is an old head, as if he is a hire who hasn't just won college football games, a conference title, quite literally a week ago. Yeah, well, they're looking in the past, and West Virginia should be looking toward the future. Why can't both coincide? Was when Bill Snyder, and granted Snyder is an example I'll continue to bring up, but it is different, but also kind of similar. Snyder hung it up at Kansas State and then came back. Were they going back to the old? Were they going back to the bad? He walks in and brings him a number one ranking. Is Scott Frost bad at UCF because, he used to be there? It's been 20 years. It's not like this was a guy who got fired by your university 3 years ago because he wasn't winning enough. Now, of course, you're going back to the old ways. And by the way, can I say something that might be controversial to Poppy, Shockey, like new school journalists that do think this is a bad hire because of this old hat deal? West Virginia is an old school place. West Virginia is the kind of place you go back to your roots. I said from day one of this coaching search, the best move that Ren Baker can make is to hire someone who understands West Virginia. I will continue to say it. This isn't Orlando. It's not even Provo. This isn't a Milwaukee or a Chicago. It's not a medium market. It's not a small market, not a big market. It's a very distinct market. You need someone who understands what it means for West Virginia to be home. Should we fault the guy because he was already there? And if you're going to fault him and say, well, you already coached here, you shouldn't be able to do it again, then I would look at what he did while he was the coach there, and that was take West Virginia from 3-8, 1-6 in the Big East in his first conference, to 11-1, 11-2, 10-2, Sugar Bowl, Gator Bowl, Fiesta Bowl. That is, checks notes, pretty darn good. If going back to old is a problem, but old is 3 consecutive 10-win seasons, I don't think I mind going back to the guy who did that. And maybe the rhetoric is because, last time he was at West Virginia, they weren't in the Big 12, and they didn't have the transfer portal. They didn't have NIL. They didn't have revenue sharing. There wasn't this entire NCAA versus the United States government stuff that's just throwing us all for a loop. How is he going to coach at West Virginia? My brother in Christ. It's not like he hasn't coached for 20 years. He did the transfer portal. He did NIL. He had to deal with all of the modern things in college football when he last coached in, a week ago, 2024, the year of our Lord. There are a lot of West Virginia fans. I'll tell you, a lot of pockets of West Virginia fans who don't like this hire. Mentioned it yesterday. We'll say it again. Nick Saban said he was interested in helping. Pat McAfee was obviously very interested in helping. I do not believe this hire could have gone through. I do not believe the hire could have gone through if not for those two guys giving their stamp of approval for Rich Rodriguez. And we know that McAfee wanted Rich Rod back here. That says a whole lot. And for a guy who has won recently, I'm not sure if these stamps of approval, if a brand new administration, if his players to a large majority of the fans to the recent wins, if those could be described as old. Andy Kotelnicki is not your head coach. Andy Kotelnicki also hasn't been a head coach at the Power 4 level. Rich Rod has. Andy's been a head coach that succeeded, listen to this, succeeded, failed again, and then succeeded. 61 years old. If you get 10 years out of a native son, 10 years out of a guy who grew up not that far from Morgantown, knows what it means to be a West Virginia coal miner, I am happy, very happy with that. And to me, sitting in this chair, I don't think we can, West Virginia should have gone with something new and innovative. What do you need innovative for? He's winning football games the last 3 years. On the verge of a 10-win season this year at Jacksonville State. I don't want to coach there. He did and was successful doing it. Well, we need new blood. We need this new era of college. He's been in the new era of college football and won. Well, can he do it in the Big 12? By God, I don't know. Can Andy Kotelnicki? I also don't know. Who's your young up-and-coming hotshot who's already proven himself at the Power 4 level that's going to come coach West Virginia? Where's that short list? It doesn't exist. I think this is a smashing hire. 3 years, you can pull this up and be like, oh, that guy was so wrong. But I don't think we're going to have to. And I do think that a lot of these talking heads are smart, good at what they do, just completely misconstrued. Like I said it yesterday. Again, I've been to West Virginia. There is something to having a guy born and raised in West Virginia in that seat as the head coach. It means a whole lot more when that is the case. And it's the case right now for the Mountaineers. My stamp of approval. Put me in with Saban and Pat McAfee. I believe bringing Rich Rodriguez in was the complete right call from Ren Baker, who nailed it with the basketball coach. And I think this is going to be very solid. No matter what the talking heads, the pundits say, this is going to be a very solid hire. Oh, but he's so old. What? Sorry, we're bringing back the guy who won and is still winning. I love it. Well done, West Virginia. Come back tomorrow for more Big 12 stuff. Oh, the Big 12 squads tonight. Whoop, whoop. This has been and always will be Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.